A messenger crosses the royal halls in despair, carrying urgent news that makes the palace tremble. They finally found her. Who the girl capable of mobilizing the crown is, no one knows, but her destiny is already sealed. While the palace moves, Blondina's reality is marked by the brutal sound of a slap. Thrown to the ground, she must face the fury of her tutor, a man consumed by gambling debts who sees her only as a burden. But the true horror arises when he reveals his plans: to sell Blondina to Baron Abelo, a man known for buying young girls for a fortune. In trying to resist, she realizes that that man's ambition is a trap with no way out. Blondina runs for her very life, driven by terror. She knows perfectly well what happens on the Baron's property. The rumors about the mutilated bodies of other girls left on those lands echo in her mind. For her tutor, she is worth 20 gold coins, the price of 6 months of peace, but for the girl, staying there means a death sentence. Exhausted and with no strength left, the only thing remaining for Blondina is a painful memory of her deceased mother, a brilliant ring left by the biological father who abandoned her as soon as she was born. She tried to protect that jewel with all her strength, but the desire to survive speaks louder. Desperate not to be sold to the Baron, she makes the most difficult decision of her life, giving up the past to guarantee her own future. Upon entering the local pawnbroker, she tries to sell the ring, but the appraiser disdains, expecting a cheap piece of metal, but the disdain turns into shock as soon as he opens the bag. Facing the crest engraved on the ring, the man loses control, accusing the girl of theft. She denies it. After all, the jewel belonged to her mother. The man leaves in a hurry, asking the girl to stay there waiting for him. Suspicious. The return of the appraiser brings with it the beginning of an even greater nightmare. He did not return alone. Armed men appear, surround Blondina, and take her away, even as she begs them not to do so. Blondina is taken to a house and placed in a room. Believing she was betrayed and sold to the terrible Baron, she begs for mercy, screaming that she has the money, but is brutally thrown into a dark carriage. Locked in the darkness, fear consumes her as she tries to understand why her desire to just live turned into this. Suddenly, someone appears at the door of the room, revealing an imposing figure that Blondina has never seen before. The unknown man analyzes her features with precision and asks the question that changes everything, confirming if she is Lily's daughter. Faced with the confused and frightened look of the girl, the man reveals his true identity. He is the Emperor of Eights. Blondina's father. Wow, I even got goosebumps here now. The day dawns, making Blondina the newest princess of the kingdom. But the freedom she yearned for so much remains out of reach. Waking up in the heart of the empire brings only a new doctrine: cold and relentless royal etiquette. Okay, that's not that bad, but she's still trapped, right? Every step, every curve of the spine, and every word are now watched, transforming her new life of luxury into a prison adorned with gold. The announcement of an imperial invitation to tea in the palace gardens should be a source of pride, but it awakens only a knot in Blondina's throat. Surrounded by leopard statues that seem to watch her every move, she remembers the miserable man who used to enslave her and feels very afraid. The maid then calls her and Blondina gulps, remembering that, in this place, no one will dare to beat her like her old tutor did. She is guided to an outside area, which looks like a small table for the tea party. She approaches and bows. The emperor laments the fact that her eyes are not golden like her hair. Upon introducing her half-siblings, Lart and Adele, the monarch says that the girl's past of misery must be erased and replaced. This sounds more like a warning to her. Despite everything, she just wants a quiet life, so she agrees. Satisfied, the emperor welcomes her as his daughter. Blondie goes back inside the house. That is when Lart approaches her with scorn, openly calling her a stupid peasant and questioning whether she learned her manners in a stable or from insects. Man, he barely showed up, but he's already insufferable. However, Blondina is no longer the helpless girl from before. Calmly, she replies that insects cannot teach humans, hitting the prince's pride dead center. What an idiot. He flies into a rage and points his finger in indignation at seeing a street rat talk back to royalty. Faced with the scandal and promises of revenge against his honor, Blondina merely sighs, too tired for ego games. She offers an ironic apology and tries to end the matter, treating her half-brother's fury as a mere childish whim, which leaves him even more out of control. Adeli's intervention seems to bring order, but it brings with it a much worse poison. The princess protects her brother and hurls a direct threat at Blondina, demanding that she not tarnish the royal family's name. Realizing that that argument will never end if she fights back, Blondina flashes an ironic smile, which deeply irritates the siblings. They withdraw, swearing she will pay for that, making it clear that the war for royal blood has only just begun. Spoiled brats, those two, huh? Finally alone and believing she will have peace if she ignores her new enemies, Blondina goes out again and is surprised by a faint meow coming from behind the bushes. Upon pushing the leaves aside, she finds the furball. What she didn't expect is that that little creature hidden there would change her destiny forever. "I am not a cat," shouted the cat. Faced with a Blondina completely perplexed by the talking animal, the little being tries to keep his guard up and ignores her questions about his injured paw. Blondina comments on how cute he is. Despite this, the cat who says he is not a cat states that his injury is none of her business. Observing the surroundings, Blondina quickly deduces that the little being was cornered. Calling out the cats she saw for a direct confrontation, she discovers that the palace garden hides a territorial dispute. Between mutual accusations of tail-biting and cowardly ambushes, the aggressors flee without apologizing, leaving the girl even more intrigued by the level of hostility among felines. Willing to help, Blondina offers shelter to treat the wound, but runs into the fierce pride of the creature, who refuses to follow an unknown human. It is at this moment that the young woman exposes her own soul, revealing her real name and confessing the pain of being an outcast in the immense palace, hated by her half-siblings and ignored by her own father. The outburst moves the animal, whose past is also marked by rejection, as he is hunted for carrying the blood of a divine beast that the world labels a monster. This is getting interesting. Yielding to Blondina's persistence, the cat jumps into her lap while imposing the condition that he will leave as soon as the bandage is done, refusing any bond of friendship. On the way to her quarters, the little being notices the tears in the young princess's eyes, despite her claiming that she is not crying. Suddenly, their walk is abruptly interrupted when an unexpected presence catches up to them. The approach of a palace servant makes Blondina tremble from head to toe, but the employee's reaction is what truly freezes Blondina's blood. Instead of shooing the animal away, the man throws himself to the ground in sheer terror, hailing the creature as a member of the legendary and feared divine leopard clan. His little smirk, haha. The cat then leaps from Blondina's lap and begins to glow. The girl is left stunned by what she sees. The one who was previously a cute and furry cat transforms into a boy with lilac eyes and elegant clothes. He warned her he was not a cat. But look at him, he is indeed a cat, and what a looker. Blondina is left just as shocked as she is confused. The panic of the kneeling servant reveals the gravity of the situation. That boy is the black leopard, considered the most relentless and fierce being of the divine leopard clan, endowed with abilities that humiliate any mortal. The boy asks what he wants with the princess. Trembling, the servant then hands over a royal package sent by the emperor and flees in a hurry, begging that no one find out he was there, making clear the terror that the clan awakens in the court. Despite this, the boy asks what she thinks of his true identity. Blondina breaks the tense atmosphere by praising the boy's beauty, bruising his pride, as he expected to be feared for his supposed grandeur. The black leopard brags, saying he could rip out the servant's heart with a single hand, but the young woman simply ignores him and decides that, regardless of his title, the first step is still to take care of that injured paw, calling him to her room to do so. Indignant with her reaction, he turns back into a cat and demands to be carried. Pretty lazy, right? Once in the room, the boy reveals his name, Ammon Akin. Blondina, on the other hand, says he can call her Britty. As night falls and the bandaging is finished, Ammon decides to spend the night in her quarters. He questions the ease with which she trusts a stranger, intrigued by the fact that Blondina sees only a helpless feline where the rest of the world sees a deadly threat. Ammon reveals that his clan deeply despises humanity due to the scent of lies and foolishness that humans exhale, but confesses that Blondina's aroma is different. The conversation about their ages exposes the biology of the divine beings, who only reach adult form around 18 years old. When the young woman tries to pet him, the boy shrinks back in embarrassment, setting boundaries but making it clear that an unprecedented connection has just been born there. Time passes, and the palace transforms into Ammon's secret refuge, as he uses human food as an excuse to visit her every single day. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the throne, the emperor faces a sequence of failures while testing other blonde youths with the magic stone. The monarch desperately searches for someone who has inherited the true imperial power, the only weapon capable of subjugating the feared, divine leopards who hold the crown in such contempt. The monarch recalls his past with Lily, Blondina's mother. He confesses that his genuine love was choked out by his ambition to reach the throne, causing him to abandon her with an empty promise of return. Now, the emperor reveals his true intentions. He is not looking for a daughter out of love, but rather for the pureblood power necessary to force the leopard clan to kneel before his empire. 3 months later, Blondina finds comfort in the friendship of her new lady-in-waiting, Lucy. The noblewoman shares the fear of the divine clan, but has grown fond of the small leopard. However, Ammon's disappearance for more than 15 days begins to suffocate the girls with worry. Speak of the devil, the moment those gem-like glowing eyes reappear in the room, Lucy realizes that he brings something much more shocking than just his presence. Ammon's disappearance is finally justified, but his return brings a disturbing surprise, a completely motionless sparrow. While the lady-in-waiting panics and flees, terrified by the scene, Blondina tries to understand the macabre gift. She patiently explains to the feline that humans prefer cute animals very much alive and full of health. The cat then tells the bird to get up. Under Ammon's deadly gaze and direct threat, the dead bird opens its eyes with a start and begins to speak desperately, revealing that it was only faking it to save its own skin from such sharp claws. The bird confesses that the black leopard shared part of his immense power with it, granting it intelligence and the ability to communicate. Delighted by the animal's chatter, Blondina forgets her fright and decides to name her newest and bizarre companion Magetto. The calm lasts only a short while when Ammon discovers that the court has organized a major archery tournament. Interested in understanding how such weak human beings use tools and weapons to dominate the continent, he demands to watch the competition. But to cross the palace without raising the suspicions of the leopard clan, and to prevent Blondina from becoming a target of enemy beasts due to her blonde hair, the boy is forced to accept a humiliating condition: wearing something to cover the magic stone on his forehead and passing himself off as a common pet cat. Despite Ammon's grumpy complaints and Magetto's jokes, the camouflage works perfectly, and the trio heads toward the event. As they walk, the small leopard disdains human pride, insisting that his true favorite pastime is not playing with yarn balls, but rather tearing his prey apart with relentless claws. But behind his threatening tone, the image of him disguised with a cute bow makes Blondina smile. The announcement of the imperial entourage's arrival officially begins the hunting tournament. Isolated from the main royalty to avoid further conflicts with her half-siblings, Blondina moves away toward the side of the shooting fields. Observing the movement from afar, she tries to entertain Ammon, suggesting they walk near the trees to stave off the deep boredom of the feline, who considers that entire military display a ridiculous waste of time by mortals. Blondina jokes, suggesting that the leopard amuse himself by climbing up the trunks like the garden insects. Suddenly, a sharp sound rips through the air as an arrow passes right beside the girl's head. Blondina ducks, trembling with fear from the fright. That is when Prince Lart emerges from the shadows of the forest, smiling and pretending to have confused her with a wild animal. This causes Ammon to burn with fury. Even before the prince can finish his provocation, a violent force strikes him, pinning him brutally against the ground. Ammon takes his form and steps over the brat. Humiliated, Lart begs for his life before Ammon's lilac eyes, while the divine leopard is ready for a new meal. Ammon questions the fragility of mortals, pointing out that a single mistake with that arrow would have left Blondina dead. While pressing the air against the ground, the beast coldly confesses that he also does not know how much strength he needs to apply for the prince's skull to simply shatter into pieces. The terror reaches its peak in the hunting gardens. The once arrogant prince begs desperately for his life, shedding tears of pure dread under the crushing weight of Ammon's foot. The divine beast dictates his new law clearly and brutally. Blondina belongs to him. Even Magetto joins the moment, demanding that the humans pay for what they did, while the princess herself watches that violent scene, recalling her past. Blondina intervenes in a surprising way. She suggests that the beast not kill the heir, but rather change his strategy. He should just attack him on parts of his body where the bruises will not be visible to the court. This surprises even Ammon. Ammon then leaves the prince shattered, and under the warning that any attempt at revenge will seal his final day on Earth. The prince swallows his pride and accepts the deal. Ammon turns back into a cat and recovers his grumpy posture. The tournament is over, and the predator now demands to return to the quarters to get his snacks. Returning to the isolated palace, Ammon asks to be carried in her arms, begging in a gentle voice for his protected one not to be afraid of him, defining himself as her sweet and little beast. Blondina praises his posture during the confrontation, making the boy brag about his combat skills. Back at the palace, Lart vents his humiliation by smashing objects, consumed by a deadly hatred for the affront he just suffered. Princess Adele harshly reprimands her brother, not out of compassion, but due to the shame and political risk of having been defeated by an animal to defend common trash like Blondina. She looks beyond the wounded pride and promises a meticulous revenge, guaranteeing that even the most powerful divine beasts possess a hidden weakness. Adele swears she will make the leopard clan pay dearly for what happened. Adele plays her political cards directly with the emperor, lamenting the empire's submission before the insolence of the leopards. Seeing the reflection of his own ambition in his daughter, the monarch makes a promise. The throne will belong to her if she manages to find the legendary descendant with blonde hair and golden eyes. This pure blood carries the forgotten power of the god Barahan, the only weapon capable of finally making the beasts bend their knees before the crown. The emperor reveals the terrible legend that haunts the empire. No human blade or arrow can pierce the impenetrable skin of the divine leopards, but the blood of Barahan, even after being hunted down by a black leopard 500 years ago, still runs somewhere on the continent. Adele accepts the sacred mission with sparkling eyes. She knows that whoever controls this lineage will control the world, and the destiny of Blondina, the blonde-haired girl everyone believes is just a helpless commoner, is about to clash with this terrible prophecy. The atmosphere in the royal quarters shifts drastically between grandeur and pure ridicule. Standing up with arrogance, Ammon tries to command respect through his roars, guaranteeing that a divine leopard would never degrade himself by playing with a measly ball of yarn. However, the performance completely collapses seconds later. The beast ends up totally entangled in the colored threads, meowing for help while Blondina and Lucy watch the scene. The proximity to humans makes Ammon recover his defensive and savage posture. Upon seeing Blondina untangle the threads near his tail, he growls, questioning if she wants to lose her hand or if she forgot that leopards can devour humans whole. Without showing a shred of fear, the young woman fires back, saying that her taste must be terrible since she grew up on moldy bread and scraps of food, ironically suggesting he devour Lucy instead. Ammon decides to spare them until they gain some weight, but takes the cue to demand something much deeper: Blondina's secret past. Blondina's past is not very pleasant, so she tells him random things. Ammon goes straight to the point and questions whether the misery of the streets has any connection to the panic she feels whenever big and violent men approach, which makes Blondina tremble. Extending a solemn promise, the beast swears he will destroy every single one of the painful memories that haunt her, as long as she reveals their names. Touched by the creature's loyalty, Blondina gently steps back, promising to tell him everything as soon as she is ready to face her own traumas. Aw, how cute. Later, Lucy helps Blondina dress in a stunning blue gown sent by the emperor himself, leaving the girl looking impeccable for her first grand ball. Upon seeing his protected one ready to leave, Ammon feigns disdain at being left behind under the care of the lady-in-waiting and the talking bird, but his attentive eyes reveal that he does not intend to leave the princess helpless in a viper's nest. Good job, Ammon. Blondina's entrance into the ballroom is met by a corridor of poisonous whispers and looks laden with contempt. The nobles openly mock the color of her dress, making it clear that, because she has no friends or allies at court, she was left out of the official theme of the party. Isolated and the target of cruel giggles, the young woman holds her head high to endure the humiliation, but the tension in the room is broken by the triumphant and imposing arrival of the emperor, the son of the empire. The monarch greets his legitimate children, but his eyes quickly find the solitary blue figure in the corner of the hall. Noticing Blondina's isolation, the emperor orders Lart and Adeli to cross the room to speak with their sister, under the justification of maintaining royal appearances. The half-siblings obey reluctantly, but what seemed like a family approach transforms into a new and cruel psychological trap. They begin to deliberately ignore Blondina, conversing with other nobles in a different dialect that Blondie does not understand. Adelis and Adeli continue parading their privileges and flaunting their aristocratic connections, certain that they are leaving their sister in complete isolation. However, Blondina throws their poison right back at them. With a cutting calmness, she refuses their hypocritical invitation to join the conversation, shooting back that she has nothing to brag about and that, either way, she does not like to show off. By turning her back and walking toward the garden, she leaves the heirs stunned by her posture. Lart panics over the suspicion that the girl perfectly understood the ancient dialect used to humiliate her, while Adeli tries to dismiss the idea, insisting that a commoner would never know such complexity. A new player enters the scene. Philip, the son of the powerful Duke Rodson, observes the trail of confidence left behind by the blonde princess. Ignoring Adeli's warnings about her sister's supposed vulgarity, the Marquis makes an intriguing decision. He will personally go over to test her. In the garden, Blondina eats a piece of pie and reflects that the court's psychological abuse is nothing compared to the slaps she used to receive in the past. That is when a movement reveals she is not alone. Ammon emerges from the shadows and lunges at the pie. Although the beast tries to disguise his protective instinct by claiming mere curiosity about human parties, the young woman softens the leopard's grumpy heart by hugging him and confessing that she can endure any royal rejection knowing she has his loyalty. Very cute. Days later, while Blondina studies chess strategies with Lucy and learns that a simple pawn cannot capture the king on its own, the palace guard announces an unexpected visitor. Philip Rodson demands an audience. Being a member of one of the 4 great lineages that sustain the empire, his presence awakens an immediate alert in the girl. Is he another one of Adeli's envoys sent to start a new confrontation, or is there something much more ambitious behind that visit? Philip breaks the court's protocols of disdain by delivering a stunning piece of jewelry to Blondina, a ruby brooch identical to the one his family crafted for the legitimate princess. For the first time since stepping into the palace, she is treated as Adeli's equal. But the smooth atmosphere is interrupted. Ammon pounces out of nowhere toward Philip, but Lucy quickly grabs him, covering the jewel on his head. Philip then pulls a letter from his suit jacket, an invitation to his birthday party. The young man says it would be an honor to host her, while Ammon knocks objects over around the room like a spoiled cat. As a final stroke of jealousy, Ammon bites Philip's leg, but he is quickly reprimanded by Blondina, who pulls him away, saying her cat is in a bad mood today. Philip, however, remains elegant and says he will be waiting for her. The moment he leaves, Blondina yells, asking what on earth Ammon was doing, while the cat feigns ignorance. Jealous, aren't we? Blondina vents to Lucy about the unpredictable attitudes of her little beast, trying to convince herself that he is just having a bad day. Seeking to ease the heavy atmosphere and break the feline's coldness, the lady-in-waiting enters the room carrying a tray of freshly baked cookies, hoping to calm things down. The attempt at a truce runs once again into the leopard's wounded pride. Ammon completely disdains the rare flowers that Philip left as a gift, classifying the expensive tea as a bunch of worthless weeds and insisting that the vegetation of his own domains is infinitely superior. But jealousy gives way to a suffocating interrogation when the beast advances toward the table, demanding to know the real motives behind that human's visit and why he made sure to deliver the invitation personally, leaving Blondina cornered under his inquisitive gaze. Trying to deflect from the subject to protect her new ruby brooch from the feline's fury, Blondina argues that the nobleman was merely being courteous to a princess. The insistent questioning makes Ammon draw back for a moment, confronted by his own possessive feelings upon realizing that he has no rational justification for so much anger. When questioned if she will really attend the birthday party, the young woman confirms that she needs to face high society if she wants to stop running away. Blondina's concern shifts focus as she remembers the humiliation she suffered at the ball for not mastering the ancient dialect of royalty, a language barrier kept secret by the pure bloodline. It is in this scenario that Ammon comes forward with a promise. He will be her secret tutor. Revealing that the divine leopard clan preserves the blood of the ancient nobles and perfect command of the forgotten language, the beast makes the princess's eyes shine with hope, allowing her to squeeze him in a warm hug that melts any remnant of his wild pride. The preparations for the first lesson begin with Lucy bringing scrolls and ink into the quarters. The lady-in-waiting and Blondina begin whispering with amusement, imagining the adorable scene of Ammon getting his little felt paws dirty in the inkwell and leaving small tracks across the paper. But what the girls expected to be a cute afternoon of learning is interrupted by a drastic and overwhelming transformation that freezes the air in the room. Fed up with being treated like an inoffensive domestic animal, Ammon breaks his feline disguise and reassumes his imposing, dark-haired human form. He stares at the activity papers. By leaning in toward the princess and commanding her to use him in whatever way she sees fit, the black leopard makes it clear that the dynamic between the two of them has changed forever. Focusing all her attention on Ammon, she asks why he changed his form, and Ammon replies that it would be impossible to hold a quill with felt paws. He dictates the first steps of the ancient dialect, focusing on crucial terms for banquets, but the lesson runs into an unexpected obstacle. With downcast eyes and a voice laden with shame, Blondina confesses that she does not even know how to read the common alphabet, apologizing for her lack of education. Ammon approaches gently, assuring her that she can learn at her own pace. The physical proximity and the dark-haired boy's magnetic presence make the princess's heart race, making it clear that his aura in human form awakens feelings she can barely control. Demonstrating a genuine protective instinct, Ammon commands Lucy to assume the role of teacher for the common alphabet whenever he is absent. Noticing Blondina's fixed and confused gaze, the boy leans in with a provocative smile, questioning if she is hypnotized by his devastating beauty. The princess's embarrassment amuses the beast upon noting how much the girl still needs to get used to his human version. Ammon returns to his adorable small leopard form, demanding affection as a reward for his patience. Blondina yields to the feline's whims, relieved to have her kitty back, but aware that the young man behind the disguise leaves her completely unsettled. Days later, focused on her studies with Lucy, the young woman repeats the first phonemes while unraveling the meaning of the word garden, without imagining that the calm of her refuge is about to be broken by the most powerful man in the empire. The emperor appears without warning, interrupting her studies and questioning her adaptation to the palace. The atmosphere freezes when the monarch mentions the traits of the late Lily and insinuates that she might have lain with another nobleman after his abandonment. The cowardly insult awakens the princess's fury, who thinks about how he knows absolutely nothing about her mother's loyalty and character. She recalls the past and states how Lily refused countless suitors and faced extreme misery without ever ceasing to love him, keeping the imperial ring as the treasure of her life until her last breath on her deathbed, never forgetting him. She died waiting for him. Blondina confronts him seriously, and at that moment, the emperor can see Lily's reflection in their daughter. Upon returning to her room, Blondina is met by Lucy and Ammon with an ultimatum. Marquis Philip sent a new messenger, and the birthday party is that very day. Knowing she needs to face high society, the princess accepts the challenge. Concerned about the vipers surrounding the event, Ammon offers his protection, suggesting he accompany her in his imposing human form. Fearing that being close to her might cause trouble for the boy with the elders of the leopard clan, Blondina declines the offer. But her response ignites the beast's wild pride, and he stares at her with flashing, hurt eyes, questioning if she is ashamed to be seen by his side. Damn, Blondina, what now? Blondina asks why Ammon would think she is ashamed of being seen next to a beast like him. With a distant look, Ammon recalls humanity's historical prejudice against the descendants of the divine beasts, labeling them as monsters. He cuts the subject short, saying that humans are all the same, but stops mid-sentence out of embarrassment. He tells Blondina to go have fun and to scratch or bite anyone who insults her at the party. Lucy tries to keep things lighthearted, asking him to play with her today. He snaps, asking if he looks like a child, but his feline instincts seem stronger, haha. On her way to her appointment, Princess Blondina Ryan Eights reflects on the dynamics between Ammon and her lady-in-waiting, Lucy. Although the feline denies it, she notices that he always acts in a docile and gentle manner with Lucy, whereas with herself, he tends to be prickly and pushes her affection away with swats of his paws. Blondina wonders if he would have answered her questions if they had been asked by Lucy, feeling a subtle tightening in her chest as she wonders if she is demanding too much from that friendship. Blondina arrives at Marquis Philip's birthday party, being warmly received by the host. The atmosphere immediately grows heavy with the arrival of her half-siblings, Princess Adele and Prince Lart. Adele, as usual, acts very sharply toward Blondie, but the girl simply replies to her as if nothing happened, which annoys her. The group of nobles notices that the red brooch worn by Blondina is identical to Adele's, a very rare piece custom-made for the royalty of Eights. The coincidence ignites fury in Adele, who interprets Philip's gift as an affront, while young Lart childishly demands that he also wants a jewel of that color for future occasions. Adele spews her venom, suggesting that Blondina should only wear cheap imitations. She converses in the ancient dialect with Marquis Philip, commanding the nobleman to make a definitive choice between her and Blondina from that day forward, making it clear that she will not tolerate her half-sister's presence trying to socialize with them like a pathetic puppy. Lart promptly agrees with the exclusion, while Blondina observes the movement from afar, keeping her posture firm. Tired of being insulted behind her back, Blondina confronts her siblings directly. Using the ancient dialect of Eights, which she learned from Ammon, an archaic language mastered strictly by high royalty, she demands that they say their offenses looking at her face instead of hiding behind a language they thought she didn't understand. Lart falls into complete shock upon seeing her master the language and tries to question her, but Blondina fires back haughtily that she is also an official member of the imperial family before turning her back and leaving the hall, followed by an Adele shaking with anger. Ha ha ha, I loved that. Well done, Blondina. Outside, Lart continues to babble endlessly, asking if the emperor had secretly taught the archaic language to their half-sister. Irritated by the public humiliation and exploding at her brother's continuous chatter, Adele tells him to shut his mouth, apologizing immediately after upon seeing her brother look sad. Internally, she calculates that she needs to swallow her pride and maintain her support for Lart, the official heir to the throne, until she can expand her own political influence in the shadows and become the empress. The royal siblings' departure is brutally interrupted by a lackey, who announces in a panic that one of the wheels of their carriage was destroyed by a mysterious force that does not seem human or animal. While Lart is insulted by his sister, amidst the chaos of the broken transport, Blondina apologizes to Philip for the discomfort caused at his party. The Marquis takes the blame for the situation, but is surprised by the serenity and maturity with which Blondina handles the nobility's contempt. Blondina explains to Philip that, due to her humble origins, she is already used to the court's side glances. She reinforces that the golden cradle of the other nobles does not give them the right to demean her, but points out that she is satisfied with her current life because she has a roof and food, possessing no interest whatsoever in threatening Adele's social position. To avoid further conflicts and protect the Marquis from the court's fury, Blondina asks him not to invite her to any more events and to decline visiting her from that moment on. Philip is perplexed, but ultimately accepts the girl's request. Seeing Blondina's strength and resilience, Philip's heart begins to waver, making the Marquis wonder what this feeling is. Haha, a competitor for you, Ammon. During a lighthearted moment, Lucy and the Sparrow Fairy babble about Ammon's cuteness, recalling the day he smelled the flowers and twitched his little ears and tail. The subject soon shifts to the conflict-ridden relationship between humanity and the divine beasts. Questioned by Blondina, Lucy explains that there is no love between the two groups, as they fought terrible historical battles in the past that left deep wounds. The sparrow jokes that humans, at least, win in the culinary department for knowing how to bake delicious cookies, while Lucy compliments that the beasts used to find humanity as bothersome as ants easy to crush, but annoying due to their mass quantities. Blondina questions why there is so much discord if a peace treaty exists. Lucy reveals the tragic events of 500 years ago. After the disappearance of the gods, the only one capable of controlling the divine beasts was a descendant of Barahan. The royal family made a deal with him and initiated a relentless massacre that nearly drove the creatures to extinction. The turning point occurred when a divine beast who had just reached adulthood killed the divine descendant, but entered a bloody, uncontrolled frenzy, taking the lives of countless humans and even members of its own species. This creature was a black leopard, just like Ammon. The beast was eventually defeated by the union of men and animals, and its final whereabouts remain a mystery. Blondina finally understands the weight Ammon carries and the reason he faces prejudice. The conversation about the past is interrupted by the arrival of a servant, bringing a luxurious package for the princess. It is a farewell gift sent by Philip, the young heir of the prestigious family of Duke Rodson, who is departing to study abroad. Blondina is impressed by the size and shine of the jewel she received, reflecting on the immense wealth and influence the Rodsons possess in high society to send something so valuable so lightheartedly. Meanwhile, Philip begins his journey. The young noble recalls with fascination Blondina's proud temperament and intelligence, having mastered the archaic dialect and publicly humiliated Adele, only to reject him with a smile on her face. Convinced that she will live in isolation for being a princess of impure blood, rejected by the nobles and protected only by the emperor's pride, Philip architectures a plan. Oh, what are you up to, Philip? He decides that, upon returning from his studies in a few years, he will use his lineage, wealth, and power to take her as his wife, believing she will gratefully accept the chance to have his support to even aim for the imperial throne. I think Blondina is indeed going to become a wife, but Ammon's wife, haha. Back at the palace, Blondina is admiring the jewel when Ammon questions what that shiny object is, and upon discovering it was a gift, notices the young woman's clear enthusiasm. Ammon grumbles jealously, remembering that when he gifted her Magetto, she only screamed in terror. The princess defends herself with a laugh, explaining she thought the animal was dead at the time. Wishing to change the subject, Blondina asks if the accessory looks good on her. Faced with Ammon's dry compliment, she sighs and comments that she would like to be rich enough to buy a collar studded with precious stones for his neck. The declaration makes Ammon's ears twitch. But driven by a possessive impulse, he lunges at the jewel, snatches it from the princess's wrist, and runs off with the treasure, leaving Blondina completely baffled. Not knowing how to react, the young woman looks at her lady-in-waiting and asks what one is supposed to do when a divine beast decides to steal your jewelry. A week has already passed since Ammon fled, carrying Blondina's bracelet. The princess wonders if the feline is missing out of pure remorse for having taken the jewel. Alone in her room, she reflects affectionately that Ammon's presence is infinitely more precious than any accessory, but laments the silence of the palace and the fact that she doesn't even know where her friend lives. She wishes he would return tomorrow as she eventually drifts off to sleep. Upon falling asleep, Blondina is invaded by an enigmatic dream about the past. Visions of war, a sacred sword delivered to restore peace by a being named Barahan, and the name Raphian echoing in the darkness. The nightmare becomes suffocating, and she feels a crushing weight over her body, seeing a dark creature with lilac eyes. Opening her eyes in a startle, she discovers that the suffocation was not just a dream. Ammon has returned and is lying lazily right on top of her. He tells her to get up while Blondie reflects on the weird dream she just had. Ammon asks where she is going, since it's not that way, but she needs a bath. Upon her return, Ammon shows her a beautiful ring-shaped jewel. Suspicious, Blondina asks where he got it, calling him out for having taken her bracelet previously. Concluding that the feline brought the ring as an apology, she thanks him for the gift. As the piece is a bit loose on her fingers, the princess decides to wear it on a cord, refusing Ammon's offer to get a new chain since she already wears the necklace she recently received from her father. Blondina comments that the emperor has been acting strangely and suddenly, changing all the furniture in the isolated palace and showering her with pampering after the conversation they had in the garden. Ammon cuts the subject short and, gripped by jealousy, possessively demands that she never meet with that human boy, Philip, or accept his letters. He even suggests beating up the noble or causing an uproar right in front of the emperor to defend her. Laughing at the overprotection, Blondina calms the feline down, explaining that Philip left to study abroad and guarantees that between the young Marquis and Ammon, the leopard will always be her obvious choice. Look at the smug little face on this kitty. The next morning, Lucy brings a special gift for Ammon, a fresh sprig of catnip. The strong aroma makes the divine beast completely lose his imposing posture. Ammon enters a hilarious trance, biting the branch frantically, rolling around the floor, and acting like a totally intoxicated domestic feline. Amused and a bit embarrassed by the scene, Blondina approaches and teases, asking if he prefers her or the branch. Ammon opens his eyes and drops the twig instantly, assuming his human form. He glances at her with those lilac pupils, which gives Blondina total goosebumps. Ammon glides toward her with an intense, charming gaze, whispering that he obviously prefers his dear Britty, leaving the princess completely blushing. Oh my god, is so cute. I absolutely love these two. Ammon, still in his human form, tries to compose himself after declaring his feelings for his dear Britty. With a flushed face, she tries to disguise her embarrassment by accusing him of being a liar, pointing out that he was completely obsessed with the plant's sprig just seconds ago. Maintaining his proximity and an intense gaze, the young man gently counters, saying that he only has eyes for her, sending shivers down the princess's spine. The Eights Empire has recently signed a trade agreement with the Kingdom of Sicily, and to celebrate the alliance, the prince and several nobles of that nation paid an official visit. The entire imperial family gathers in the lobby to welcome the guests. During the interaction, a pet snake brought by the Sicily delegation glides across the carpet, startling Princess Adele, who recoils in panic. In contrast, Blondina remains calm in front of the reptile. Blondina's dignified and courageous posture earns public praise from the emperor, leaving Adele deeply irritated and humiliated for having shown weakness. Consumed by jealousy, Adele tries to justify herself arrogantly before the monarch, insinuating that Blondina only lacked fear because she was used to the roughness of the streets, whereas she herself was too refined to handle such situations. The emperor merely points out that Adele still has a lot of growing up to do. Although Blondina feels a subtle satisfaction upon receiving her father's approval, she walks alone right after the event ends, reflecting on the fact that she still feels like a fish out of water within the imperial family and pondering the true meaning of having a family. Blondina's loneliness is interrupted when she notices Ammon's presence watching her from behind a low wall. She reflects on whether Ammon might be the closest thing she can call family. Can he really be? She continues walking outside the palace. That is when Ammon appears there. The feline reveals that he followed her as soon as she left the hall because he got bored. Upon noticing that the princess's eyes are welling up with tears, Ammon approaches, and she hugs him tightly with deep gratitude, finding comfort in her friend's unwavering loyalty while confessing just how much she missed him. The intimate moment is interrupted by the approach of one of the visitors from Sicily. The foreign noble walks through the garden and is surprised to see Blondina hugging the leopard, questioning if the animal is her pet. She tries to cover it up as best as she can, but before the princess can explain herself, the man approaches in a creepy manner and then reveals a black snake inside his sleeve. The snake, however, seems to be very docile. The visitor smiles gallantly and praises the princess's beauty, commenting that it is only natural for animals to be attracted to her. The bold approach of the snake and the foreign prince's compliments awaken Ammon's territorial instincts and fierce jealousy. The black leopard growls and flashes his claws menacingly to ward off the reptile, forcing Blondina to quickly hold him back to prevent a diplomatic incident. Days later, Prince Lart is riding through the gardens and notices Blondina and Lucy there. The two seem to be having a picnic, which also appears to spark a certain interest in the young man. Later at the palace, Prince Lart is harshly reprimanded by the Empress for his lack of emotional control, being warned that such a volatile temperament makes him unfit to rule. That is when we see a flashback. During a banquet, some nobles began maliciously praising a marquis's son's fluency in the ancient dialect of Eights, dropping hints that any noble unable to master such a basic language was no better than a commoner. Knowing the provocations were directed at him, as he is not fluent, Lart exploded with rage and threw tea at the instigators, acting like a common brawler. As punishment for his impulsive reaction, the monarch orders him to spend time in isolation, reflecting on his actions. Lart walks around the outskirts of the palace, feeling like an outcast, accusing the nobility of being nice to his face, but ridiculing him behind his back. That is when he catches a tense conversation between Lucy and Vilt, one of Blondina's maids. Vilt demands her transfer to another palace and ignores the pleas of Lucy, who tries to remind her of how kind Blondina has always been, overlooking incidents and even offering sweets to the servant's family. Vilt fires back coldly, stating that servants are judged by their master's positions and that, given Blondina's non-existent status, it isn't worth staying there. She advises Lucy to do the same and resign, making it clear that nobles and servants only get close for convenience and betray each other as soon as they lose interest. Hidden, Lart observes Lucy and begins to question why she remains so loyal to a princess without any political power. He ponders over Lucy's situation. The daughter of a decaying family, she possesses only her integrity, loyalty, and a charming face. Night falls and the royal family gets ready for dinner. Prince Lart continues to drift in thought, startling himself with his own mind as he catches himself admiring the grace, the subtle smile, and the delicate gestures of the lady-in-waiting. Once in bed, he tries to push the thoughts away, remembering that he is under constant threat from Adeli in the dispute for the throne, and that, for royalty, marriage is merely a political bargaining chip. He needs to unite with someone influential, not a young woman without resources. On the lawn of the isolated palace, we return to the picnic scene. Blondina pets Ammon, commenting that he looks like an ordinary kitty when he purrs. The calm is broken when the little bird and Lucy comment enthusiastically about the fast-approaching national riding competition. Upon discovering what the sport is about and admitting she has never ridden a horse, Blondina accepts Lucy's invitation to visit a nearby training track and practice a little. Upon arriving at the massive riding track, the group is spotted from afar by Prince Lart, who is immediately shaken upon noticing Lucy's presence. While Blondina and her lady admire the elegance of the riders, Ammon disdains human mounting. To prove his point, the black leopard takes an impressive leap and dashes at high speed across the lawn, flaunting his own agility and proclaiming that moving on one's own paws is infinitely more impressive. Blondina laughs and Lucy praises him, admiring that he is indeed impressive. This, however, makes Blondina wonder why Ammon always seems to want to impress Lucy. The moment is suddenly interrupted by a desperate scream, leaving the girls completely bewildered. The scene begins with Prince Lart sprawled on the ground of the riding track after a nasty fall. Distracted while watching Lucy, he ended up falling off his horse and spraining his ankle. Blondina and Lucy run toward him in worry, but the proud young prince tries to hide the pain and orders them not to make a fuss. When he tries to stand up, however, his legs give out completely due to his visibly swollen ankle. Noticing the severity of the injury, Lucy asks for permission and kneels to examine the prince, applying a bandage as emergency first aid. She advises him to seek proper medical treatment as soon as he returns to the palace. Feeling embarrassed and vulnerable in front of the young woman he is falling for, Lart tries to maintain his tough guy act, claiming he is an adult and can walk on his own. He yells at them to leave him alone, but his attempt to take a step fails miserably in the face of the sharp pain. Realizing he will not be able to move on his own, Lucy offers her shoulder for support, forcing the proud prince to limp away, propped up by her. The close physical proximity makes Lart's heart race. Later, back in his quarters, the young prince falls into a deep internal conflict. Recalling his father's harsh lessons that a weak emperor is the greatest threat to the empire, and that royalty does not have the luxury of giving in to love, Lart suffers in silence as he admits to himself that he is completely in love with Lucy Hariv. In Blondina's room, Lucy brings a pair of new shoes for the princess, noting that she has outgrown all her old ones. In a playful tone, Blondina wonders if she will keep growing until she gets stuck in the doorframes. She takes the opportunity to question Ammon about when he will finally grow up, since he remains so small and fluffy. The feline replies mysteriously that he will grow at the right time. As soon as Lucy says goodbye, Blondina grabs Ammon, saying that now she is going to play with him. Ammon, however, gets all twitchy and escapes from the girl's hands. Despite the playful banter, Blondina reflects with melancholy that Ammon has been rejecting her hugs lately, wondering if the distance is because he prefers Lucy's company. Hours later, during the dead of night, Lucy returns to the princess's room, reminding her of their planned outing to see the glowing mushrooms in the forest. There, she spots a mysterious man standing beside the bed, going on high alert, thinking he is an intruder. The man then pulls back his hood. Lucy freezes upon noticing the invader's glowing eyes and familiar jewelry. With a charming smile on his face, the dark-haired youth reveals his adult human form. Taking a lock of Blondie's hair, he proclaims that he has finally kept his promise to grow up. And boy, did he get even more handsome. In the forest, Ammon rests in his black leopard form and receives a visit from the Grand Elder Aisha. The elder questions him about whom he has chosen to be the official witness for his coming-of-age ritual, pointing out that, in the absence of his parents, he himself could take on this role of honor. Ammon reveals he has different plans. He wishes to invite a member of the human imperial family. Facing the elder's surprise, the leopard explains disdainfully that since the nobles usually look down on beasts, forcing one of them to come to the forest will serve to put the royalty in their proper place. Although Ammon is thinking of Blondina, he lies to Aisha, saying he will request the presence of the emperor's first child, drawing a parallel to the fact that he himself is the firstborn of the divine leopard's former leader. The elder accepts the justification and reminds him that, after his coming of age and that of his companions Hala and Shanti, a ceremonial duel will be held to decide the new clan leader, a position vacant since the death of Ammon's mother 10 years ago. Aisha warns Ammon to control his instincts and not to kill his opponent in the duel, fearing the stigma that black leopards enter a murderous frenzy. The youth fires back with pride, guaranteeing that he will never act like a bloodthirsty monster. The elder asks why Ammon is in that small form. He says he finds it cuter and easier to move around. At the imperial palace, the emperor and empress discuss the leopard clan's demand regarding the sending of the firstborn. To avoid sending their direct children to the forest of beasts, the empress suggests a devious alternative to the monarch, mentioning Blondina. He glares at her coldly, reminding her that Blondina is also his daughter. Blondina is summoned to the sovereign's presence. The emperor communicates that the clan of divine leopards has requested her participation as the official witness in the coming-of-age ritual and asks if she accepts the task. Without hesitating, the princess accepts the call. The emperor observes her in silence, admired by the girl's swift response. Blondie, however, does not back down. She even gets confused by so much silence. As she leaves the hall under tense glances, the news spreads quickly and reaches her half-sibling's ears. In her quarters, Princess Adele flies into a complete fit of rage upon being informed that the leopards specifically asked for the first child, and that Blondina will take on the role. Feeling outraged at being overshadowed both in her father's attention and in prestige with the divine beasts, Adele insults her half-sister and immediately orders her spies to watch Blondina's every step in the forest, eagerly waiting for any slip-up that can serve as a pretext to destroy her. This Adele really has no limits, does she? Blondina and Ammon talk in the princess's quarters about the role of a witness in the ritual. Ammon plays down the importance of the ceremony, claiming it is just a routine matter. While sealing a letter for her, Blondina complains that he should have warned her sooner, as she got quite a scare when the emperor summoned her. Amused, Ammon reminds her that he tried to tell her the previous week, but she was distracted tying a blue ribbon around his neck. When Blondina asks if she needs to prepare, the young man tells her to relax and drops a, "Trust me, I will take care of everything." The princess laughs and teases that it sounds like a marriage proposal from a commoner, leaving Ammon completely flustered and shocked by the provocation. Trying to change the subject upon noticing Ammon's discomfort, Blondina comments that the topic of marriage has been highly discussed because Lucy started taking bridal etiquette lessons, even without having any suitors. The news stuns Ammon, who turns pale and overreacts, leaving the princess slightly annoyed and convinced that the feline really has feelings for Lucy. "Oh no, Blondina, you are completely mistaken." Lost in his own thoughts about the maturity and mating habits of his species, Ammon begins to mutter quietly to himself and question why humans get married so early. Blondina cannot understand a single thing he whispers and concludes, amused, that 18-year-old leopards suffer from mood swings identical to those of human teenagers. Before leaving, he confirms that the ritual will take place in 3 days. 3 days later, at the moment of departure, Blondina is surprised by the presence of the emperor, who personally goes to the carriage to wish her a safe journey. Touched and confused by her father's rare gesture of affection, she travels in silence to the sacred domains. Upon disembarking in the forest of the divine beasts, the princess is received with curiosity and enthusiasm by other cubs of the clan, who find it amazing that Ammon brought a human as his official witness. The solemn coming-of-age ceremony begins in the clearing. Blondina takes her place at the observer's bench, positioned right in front of Ammon and the other 2 young leopards, Hala and Shanti. Under the watchful eyes of the adult beasts surrounding the site, the ritual unfolds intensely. Mature members of the clan use their own fangs to extract blood from their bodies and smear it on the foreheads of the 3 young initiates. Swallowing her nervousness to remain strong for her friend, Blondina witnesses the conclusion of the rite, crowned by the majestic roar of the beasts. The ritual finally comes to an end, but when Ammon looks at Blondina, he sees her completely paralyzed. The echo of the divine beast's roars fills the sacred forest. Upon seeing the size and power of that clan, Blondina realizes that Ammon belongs to an imposing and terrifying species, which makes her remember her past. A shiver runs down her spine, and fear makes her heart race. However, the nervousness disappears the moment Ammon approaches and looks at her with the same sweetness and gentleness as always. Feeling safe by his side, the princess warmly congratulates him on the conclusion of the ritual. While the other beasts watch the interaction, Ammon notices Ammon's exhaustion and decides to take her away so she can rest, knowing he should not show too much intimacy with a member of human royalty in front of the clan. Upon leaving the clearing, Blondina questions where they are going to sleep, since she only sees trees around them. Ammon reveals that they will stay at his house, explaining that the beasts detest sleeping on the damp earth, and because of that, made humans build residences for them in the past. On the way, the princess notices the absence of his parents at the ceremony and discovers that the young leopard lives completely alone. Blondina comments that the other cubs of the clan didn't seem to recognize her, even though they were the same ones who were with Ammon the day he fell from the cliff years ago. The feline explains that all humans look the same to animals. Curious, she asks if she also looks like any other person to him, but Ammon counters firmly, "Of course not. You are you." The response makes the young woman's heart skip a beat. They arrive at a beautiful and well-kept wooden house. Ammon explains that he cleans the place himself, assuming human form to sweep the rooms, and points out the bathroom so the princess can take a bath and relax her tense body. Upon entering the room, Blondina takes off the cloak she was wearing, exposing her shoulders and leaving Ammon shocked and unsure of where to look. Amused by the feline's embarrassment, the princess decides to tease him, asking why he is so embarrassed when he himself spends all his time naked, covered only by his black fur. Ammon, in turn, teases her back, saying that maybe he will get naked in his human form too. Laughing at her friend's indignant reaction, Blondina reflects on how his human form is endowed with an ethereal beauty, with dark hair and striking violet eyes. Blondina displays her 20-year-old self-confidence, mocking the leopard's nervousness and saying she wouldn't even blink her eyes if he were to get naked in his human form right in front of her, before locking herself in the bathroom. Alone in the room and trembling with frustration, Ammon huffs and grumbles quietly about the princess's naivety. He mutters that she has absolutely no idea of the immense effort he is making to control himself and hold back his own instincts, which is the real reason why he avoids transforming in her presence. Man, now everything makes total sense, haha. I am absolutely loving this story. In the silence of the night, inside the cozy cottage in the forest, Blondina wakes up and finds Ammon sitting on the edge of the bed, completely awake and pensive. When questioned about the reason for being awake, the young man changes the subject with his heart racing and asks her to go back to sleep. Sensing the melancholy atmosphere and the protective look of the feline, Blondina decides to open up. Ammon stares at her with seriousness and asks directly who the person was that hurt and traumatized her so much in the past. Overcome by the trust she has in her friend, Blondina recounts her childhood of extreme poverty before being recognized by the emperor. She shares that, in order to survive and avoid being sold off to some scoundrel, she accepted work at a traveler's inn. The innkeeper, knowing the little girl had nowhere else to go, treated her with extreme cruelty, constantly beating her as if she were a mere pebble on the street. She sadly recalls her worst 8th birthday, when a kind neighbor gave her a cookie. The innkeeper pushed her to the ground just for seeing her smile, breaking the cookie and demanding that she get back to work. That night, even though she was bruised and crying, little Blondina ate the dirt-covered cookie in secret, finding it delicious in the midst of her pain. Deeply touched and outraged by the cruelty his dear Bridie suffered, Ammon holds her hands and proposes that they return to that inn together. The young man explains that she needs to face her fears in person to see just how weak and insignificant that man truly is. Blondina breaks down in a liberating cry and is comforted by Ammon, who whispers a promise. As soon as she overcomes her past traumas, he will finally show his true, adult form to her. Exhausted from crying, the princess thanks him for the support and falls asleep, murmuring that, despite everything, escaping the inn led her to meet the emperor and, above all, to find Ammon. While she sleeps, the youth assumes his adult form. Determined, he promises himself that he will become the leader of the clan so he can protect her and stay with her forever and ever. The next day, the return journey to the imperial palace begins. Blondina rides on her mare, Daisy, while Ammon perches on the saddle, visibly sleepy. The princess teases that he must be sensitive to the environment to not have slept well, and the feline grumbles that she is just too slow to understand the real reason. The peaceful journey is suddenly interrupted in the middle of the forest when a group of armed bandits surrounds the young woman. The criminals, believing a noble traveling completely alone would be an easy target, demand all of her belongings with arrogant threats. Calmly, Ammon tells Blondina to dismount from the horse and trust him. The leopard approaches the mare Daisy and gives a direct order: "Go have some fun." Daisy begins to gallop furiously in the midst of the scoundrels, trampling and throwing kicks without mercy at everyone in front of her. To Blondina's own surprise, the mare Daisy reveals herself to be a mystical and extremely powerful combat mount from the sacred mountain. Blondina watches the mare in shock, realizing that appearances in the forest of the divine beasts indeed deceive. However, when she looks at one of the groaning bandits, she notices something that could change everyone's destiny forever. That blonde man possessed golden eyes, just like in the legend of the palace. My goodness, this is only getting more and more interesting. O looked on in alarm at the golden eyes of the man in front of her, identical to those of her late mother. With no time to waste, she hurried to leave the place before the unconscious men came back to their senses. Recalling the painful memories of her childhood and her mother's affectionate figure, Bridie sought comfort in O Bieldina arms. Suddenly, it was as if everything vanished with the cuteness of his hug. Upon arriving at the village, Blondina crossed paths with Hans, the cobbler's son, who did not recognize her. Disguised as a simple traveler, the girl accepted the young man's help to guide her to the only inn in the region, an inn she knew all too well. At the inn, the establishment's owner did not recognize her either, making Blondina realize how much she had changed since childhood. That was a good thing. The owner's wife led the young woman to the best available room, while Blondina glared with disdain at the man who had once terrified her. Suddenly, the landlady stopped, recognizing Blondina. The man, taking notice of the commotion, heard the girl's name and began hurling malicious insults at her. The man accused the girl of having been sold off to nobles and humiliated her, saying she had been discarded and had crawled back with nowhere else to go. Blondina demanded that the man take his hands off her, and in response, she slapped him right across the face. The man turned back and tried to strike her, but stopped dead in his tracks as Blondina told him to go right ahead. Now, she is no longer afraid. She asked why he wasn't doing anything. Blondina made it clear that she intended to punish him for the abuse she suffered in her childhood, and announced that she would be staying at the place for 4 days. Faced with the man's desperation and apologies, the girl refused to forgive him and headed up to her room. In the room, Ammon praised Brittany for having the courage to finally stand up to that man. As the feline purred in her lap, Ammon viewed the situation with coldness and silently pondered whether he shouldn't just kill his companion's former abusers. At the inn, the landlady complained furiously while preparing a third bowl of food for Blondina. The woman and her husband grumbled about the young woman's demanding attitude, indignant at seeing a former servant treat them with such coldness and authority. "You two deserve way worse, honestly." The owner of the establishment entered the kitchen excitedly to announce to his wife that Blondina intended to give them a thank you gift for the years she had lived there. The two celebrated the news, believing the young woman would finally acknowledge the supposed care she had received in her childhood. Earlier that day, Brittany visited Jax, the local creditor, expressing interest in buying the inn's mortgage. The debt collector was surprised by the proposal, but ended up closing the deal and transferring the property rights to Blondina. Back to the present. Possessing the deed, Blondina presented the document to the couple and announced that she was the new owner of the inn, ordering the two to vacate the property. Desperate, the former abusers begged for mercy and for more time to pay off the debt, claiming they would have nowhere else to go. Blondina recalled the past episodes of cruelty, when she wept while sick and was forced to work without rest under threats of being sold off. Without showing compassion, the young woman repeated the harsh words she had heard in her childhood and gave the couple until the next day to pack their bags and leave. During the night, consumed by hatred and refusing to accept the eviction, the man grabbed a knife and invaded Blondina's room, determined to kill her. However, as he approached the bed, the attacker was caught off guard in the dark by a menacing figure glaring at him with a terrifying smile. "Hell yeah, my King Ammon." In the morning, Ammon rushed Blondina to wake up and get ready quickly for breakfast. Hungry and impatient, the feline avoided giving explanations and simply demanded that she hurry up so they could eat. Upon going downstairs, the two came across chaos in the inn after the owner was found severely injured and covered in blood. The attacker's wife tried to use the tragedy to move Blondina and avoid eviction, but the young woman remained unshakable, stating she had no responsibility for what had occurred. Confronted by the woman, Blondina recalled the times when she was exploited and mistreated in that place without any compassion. The young woman made it clear that losing the inn was merely the natural consequence of everything the couple had sown in the past, warning them to leave with their lives while they still could. Free from the traumas of the past, Blondina decided to leave the village with Ammon after their meal. While the feline comforted her, saying the couple would suffer the consequences for the rest of their lives, the young woman reflected on overcoming the fear she used to feel toward her former abusers. "Man, I honestly felt kind of sorry for them, haha." Back at the palace, Blondina spoke with the crown prince about her visit to the forest of divine beasts. The noble demonstrated envy and resentment that a bastard had been invited and granted protection by the magical creatures, fearing he might lose his place in the line of succession to the throne. The arrival of the emperor interrupted the conversation, and the sovereign treated Blondina with an affection that recalled the young woman's late mother. Watching the scene filled with hatred, Princess Adele grew furious at her father's affection and questioned herself angrily about how the henchmen she hired had failed in their mission to eliminate Blondina during the trip. "Ah, of course it had to be you, right, jealous freak." Blondina lamented the temporary farewell to Ammon, aware that she would not see the feline for an entire month. With the conclusion of his coming-of-age ceremony, Ammon needed to prepare for the final battle that would determine the new leader of the divine beasts, leaving the young woman apprehensive about his safety. To distract her mind and avoid anxiety during her companion's absence, Blondina invited the maid Lucy to gather mushrooms and raspberries in the forest. On the way, the pair was approached by Prince Lart, who had been frequenting the area quite often, interested in Lucy's gentle presence. Lart insisted on accompanying the young women during their stroll in the forest. They end up agreeing. However, later on, upon seeing Blondina crouching in the dirt looking for vegetables, the prince didn't miss the opportunity to jab at her disdainfully about her simple origins. Even with the taunts about her humble past, Blondina maintained her composure and continued teaching Lucy how to identify mushroom species. When Lart tried to approach, the young woman demanded a sincere apology for his insults before allowing him to accompany them. Overcoming his own pride to stay close to Lucy, Lart apologized for his rudeness. Accepting the gesture, Blondina handed the harvesting basket to the prince to carry, and the group headed together toward the area where the raspberry bushes were located. The group ventured deeper into the woods, trusting in the safety of the territory markings left by Ammon's claws. However, Blondina and Lart soon noticed a strange atmosphere in the air, marked by an unsettling silence and the complete absence of the sound of birds and insects. When trying to return, they realized that the path seemed completely altered and that they were lost in the dense woods. Sensing the imminent threat in the altered environment, Lart took the lead to protect the girls and ordered them to stay close as they attempted to find a way out. Lart suggested that Blondina call the divine beast, but the group recognized the danger of attracting wild animals since they were in an area without Ammon's territory markings. Faced with the growing danger, Lart assumed a protective and mature stance toward Blondina and Lucy, acting like a true brother. Well, look at that. Seems the boy really did grow up. Suddenly, a wild bear appeared in their path and threatened the group. In an act of desperation to save her companions, Blondina decided to split the group up and ran to the right to draw the beast's attention, while pleading in her thoughts for Ammon to show up and save her. While fleeing and screaming Ammon's name, Blondina ended up tripping and fell to the ground right before the beast's claws. Convincing herself that she was about to die, the young woman mentally said her goodbyes to Ammon and thanked him for the happiness he had brought into her life. But at the exact moment the bear lunged for the final strike, a legendary creature intervened with a powerful roar and brought down the threat. Ah, my dear Ammon. Earlier that day, Ammon fought valiantly in his race's ritual. He defeated every single enemy beast. However, suddenly, he heard Blondina's cry in the forest and immediately rushed off to save her. Just as the beast was about to be executed, Blondina regained consciousness and intervened in a weak voice, asking the feline to spare the animal's life. Ammon questioned the plea for mercy, but yielded to Blondina's appeal. The guardian scolded the girl for entering the forest during a period of unstable magic and dangerous creatures, masking his deep concern upon noticing the young woman's injuries. Ammon guided Blondina to the location where Lart and Lucy were waiting safely. Upon witnessing the feline's courteous treatment toward Lucy and his reaction when seeing the two together, Blondina felt her heart ache, harboring the painful suspicion that Ammon might be in love with the maid. Oh man, even my heart is aching with this one. You're getting it all wrong, Britty. Back at the palace, Lucy said her goodbyes and thanked Ammon for saving everyone. Ammon refused to leave and declared he would spend the night right there, stating in a possessive, intense tone that he had no intention of ever separating from Blondina again. That's my boy. Ammon insisted on spending the night in Blondina's room, lying down on the floor right beside her bed. The young woman gazed at the fully grown feline and reflected affectionately on how, despite his adult, striking appearance, he remained the exact same companion as always. Alone in her bath, Blondina recalled the bear attack and the heroic way Ammon had rescued her. The feline's proximity and transformation left the young woman flustered, her heart racing as she questioned her own feelings. Yep, you have a massive crush on him, Britty. Upon directly asking Ammon if he liked Lucy and hearing a positive answer, Blondina finally understood the true nature of her emotions. She realized that her affection for the feline had never been just friendship, but love, leaving her torn on how to handle this newly discovered feeling and how to make that big cat love her back. In the throne room, the emperor scolded Lart for placing the party in danger within the forest without authorization. Demonstrating maturity and taking full responsibility to protect Blondina and Lucy, Prince Lart used his good humor to lighten the mood and justified the outing by praising the local raspberries. The emperor wanted to understand how the group had made it out safely with the help of the divine beast, seeing a diplomatic opportunity in Blondina's closeness with the creatures. During the conversation, Lart and Blondina traded friendly taunts regarding Lucy's well-being, displaying an increasingly tight bond between the siblings. Princess Adele watched the growing harmony among the emperor, Lart, and Blondina with deep resentment. As the sovereign asked the young woman to officially invite the divine beast to the palace, a noblewoman brought up the imminent return of Marquis Philip Rodson from abroad, stirring up memories in Blondina. Ah yes, he did say that when he returned, he would ask for Britty's hand in marriage. The little mystical bird Magetto visited Blondina in her room and gave her an affectionate scolding, worried about the danger the young woman had faced in the forest during a period of magic instability. The girl returned the affection and reassured the creature. Curious, Blondina asked Lucy, whom the maid liked more between Ammon and Lart, hearing Ammon's name without a second of hesitation. However, upon rephrasing the question regarding who Lucy would choose to be with if both were to declare their feelings, the maid caught the princess completely off guard by answering that she would choose Prince Lart. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Adele vented her fury and frustration on the servants. The princess violently assaulted one of her subordinates following the failure of her plans to get rid of Blondina in the forest. Princess Adele continued to vent her fury against one of her injured subordinates, threatening to take his life over the failure of their missions. However, upon noticing that the man had blonde hair and golden eyes, the noblewoman identified in him the traits of Barahan's descendants, the only ones capable of defeating the divine beasts, seeing a brand new opportunity to eliminate Blondina. In Blondina's room, Lucy explained her point of view regarding Ammon, clarifying that she respected and admired him, but harbored no romantic feelings for him, while also confessing that she still felt a bit afraid of the feline due to the different way he treated her compared to the princess. Upon wrongly concluding that Ammon was experiencing unrequited love for Lucy, Blondina felt pity for her companion and admitted to herself how much she missed him. At that very moment, Ammon popped up unexpectedly in Britty's room. She smiled and welcomed him back once more. Hesitant, Ammon walked up and wrapped Blondina in a hug. Blondina noticed that Ammon's breathing was heavy and his body warm, but the feline brushed it off and proudly revealed that he had become the new supreme leader of the divine beasts. While receiving her companion's affection, the princess silently questioned herself for how much longer she would have to hide her romantic feelings for the feline. Meanwhile, Marquis Philip Rodson was returning from his journey abroad, taking note of the changes in the imperial capital over the years. Thinking of Blondina with an idealized, patronizing vision, the noble reflected on the princess and revealed his intention to visit her soon to become her protector. Prince Lart shyly approached Blondina's quarters to ask for Lucy to be given a day off. That was when the maid suddenly popped up, scaring the prince out of his skin. Embarrassed at being caught off guard by the maid, the young man plucked up the courage and invited her to go to the opera together, leaving Blondina surprised by the romantic scene unfolding between the two. Watching the romance blossom, Blondina reflected sadly on the barriers between humans and divine beasts, believing that such a relationship would never work out. However, Ammon appeared unexpectedly in the room and countered the princess's thoughts, asserting firmly that he would do whatever he pleased and that nothing would stop him. Seeing her companion's irritation, Blondina tried to calm him down and assured him that she would never be afraid of him, regardless of his appearance or status. The young woman reinforced that Ammon would always be the same to her, demonstrating sincere affection for the feline. Ammon got goosebumps all over from Britty's declaration. Unable to contain his emotions, he bolted across the room, wrecking the entrance door in a sudden impulse before vanishing. The feline's sudden disappearance dragged on for 2 whole weeks, leaving the princess consumed by longing. While playing to distract her mind, Blondina was informed about the arrival of Marquis Philip Rodson, who had just returned from abroad. The noble formally presented himself in the princess's quarters with a bouquet of flowers, making a bow that sparked suspicion and sarcastic comments from the little bird Magetto. Sensing the Marquis's marital intentions, Blondina coldly declined his invitation for a walk and brought the visit to an end. The princess decided she wouldn't waste time with noble courtships, keeping her focus entirely on winning Ammon's heart and planning a future where humans and divine beasts could be together. At that moment, Ammon returned silently to the room, noticing that she had fixed the broken door. When Blondina celebrated her companion's return and tried to draw close, the feline embraced her back. But the moment he caught sight of the flowers given by Philip, he immediately marched over and smashed the vase. The feline declared possessively that the room and Blondina herself belonged to him, demanding that the young woman allow no one else inside to prevent any violence. Blondina calmed her companion and asked curiously why he didn't assume human form anymore, requesting to see his adult appearance. Challenging the princess's courage, Ammon transformed into a young man right before the girl's impressed eyes. And Bridie just stared at him, speechless. I bet her heart was beating out of her chest right then. Now in human form, Ammon approached boldly and scooped Bridie up in his arms, asking if she thought she could handle this. She began caressing Ammon's face and neck, completely awestruck by her companion's striking beauty. That's when he suddenly started planting kisses on Bridie's hand. Trying to convince herself that the affectionate gestures were merely old habits of her partner, Blondina felt her heart race as Ammon asked for permission to touch her body. Ammon then placed her on the bed and laid her down, leaving Blondina blushing deep red. The young man showed that he had been eagerly awaiting adulthood to touch her that way, fearing only that he might scare her with the change. Ammon leaned in and kissed Blondina's neck, leaving the young woman flustered and confused about the boundaries of affection between humans and magical creatures. Fearing she might take advantage of Ammon's supposed innocence, the princess cut the moment short and asked to take things slow, receiving a teasing smile in return. Ammon announced that he would make the most of his human form by sleeping in the same bed as Blondina, promising to fall asleep holding her all night long. Observing the princess's naivety toward his true intentions, the young man agreed to slow down the pace, making it clear that it was only a temporary truce. On another day, Princess Adele visited the emperor without prior notice to show affection and try to grow closer to the sovereign. The ruler suggested they take a trip together after the grand ceremony at the palace, promising to take her to the Zervan Peninsula, the place where they used to attend the ice festival. Adele questioned the excessive effort and preparations her father was making for the inauguration ceremony of the new leader of the divine beasts. The emperor firmly countered his daughter, explaining that the empire's honor was at stake before the rest of the continent and that the event demanded absolute perfection. The princess inquired about the search for Barahan's descendants, pointing out that the power of this bloodline would be the only way to subjugate the magical creatures and consolidate the throne's authority. The emperor reflected on how he himself had planted that idea in his daughter as a backup plan, preferring Blondina's diplomacy but using Adele's ambition to test her. The sovereign handed a mysterious key to Adele and officially entrusted her with the mission to find Barahan's descendant, suggesting that success in this task would prove her capability for the imperial succession. The moment the satisfied princess withdrew, Prince Lart entered the throne room. Taking advantage of the moment alone with his father, Lart questioned the emperor about the past and the reason he had abandoned Blondina's mother. Rather than answering directly about the pains of the past, the sovereign noticed the change in his son's behavior. He then asked if the young prince had fallen in love with someone. Lart admitted that he wanted to protect the person he liked, referring to Lucy, without viewing her as an object to be possessed. The emperor advised the young man to embrace his responsibilities as heir and fight for the throne, stating that only an emperor with unshakable power could truly protect the woman he loves. The next day marked the beginning of the Grand Hunting Tournament, a traditional event hosted in the Forest of Divine Beasts with the permission of the magical creatures to preserve peace between the peoples. The sovereign gave the official signal and declared the competition among the empire's nobles open. Observing the event without high expectations, Blondina imagined she wouldn't receive any prey from the competitors, predicting that all prizes would be offered to Adele, just like in previous years. However, while resting out of boredom, the young woman was caught off guard by the unexpected approach of Marquis Philip Rodson. Yeah, looks like Philip isn't giving up on Blondina anytime soon, is he? Bridie sat at the dinner table among nobles when she noticed plenty of whispering and side glances directed at her. The nobles gathered in the hall commented on the luxury of the imperial banquet and expressed anxiety over the ceremony for the new leader of the divine beasts, subtly sneering at the honoree's animalistic nature. Overhearing the conversation around her, Blondina reflected on how distant Ammon seemed in the face of those formal comments, even though they had played house as usual just the day before. The ladies talked about rumors of a giant black leopard spotted at dawn inside the palace. Bridie recognized Ammon from the description and thought about how his growth made it difficult to maintain discretion now. Elsewhere, the noblewomen gathered just as the prince's horse arrived at the scene. Mounted on horseback, the prince arrived before the noblewomen, who were already on their way out. Approaching Lucy, the prince showed off a fox he had hunted, presenting it as a gift. The first prince surprised the guests by handing over his catch directly to her, Lucy Hariv, a maid from a ruined family and Blondina's lady-in-waiting. Lucy accepted the unexpected tribute with immense honor, while Prince Lart promised to bring back an even larger prey next time. Angered by her brother's action, Adele questioned his decision to gift a servant. Lart firmly declared his intention to own up to his feelings for Lucy before the emperor, leaving the princess in complete disbelief. Adele grew infuriated by Lart getting close to someone tied to Blondina, but took solace in calculating that a romance with a powerless woman would weaken her brother's bid for the imperial throne. Despite Adele bringing up how their father would never approve of such a relationship, Lart brushed off her warnings and reaffirmed to himself his resolve to gain enough power to protect his bond with Lucy. As time passed, several nobles returned and presented their catch to the ladies of their choosing. Adele, in turn, received gifts from various knights and suitors in exchange for her attention, leaving the princess visibly pleased. Just then, someone arrived, calling out for Blondina. Kneeling down, he asked the lady to accept his hunting offer. Philip really made an entrance, didn't he? But our Bridie's heart already has an owner, my dear. Marquis Rodson stepped forward in the hall and formally presented his prey as a tribute to Blondina's beauty. Already my girlfriend. The nobles present recognized Marquis Rodson Philip's victory in the hunting tournament. However, the start of the award ceremony was abruptly interrupted by the sudden intrusion of a gigantic beast, triggering panic and a stampede among the guests. The crowd realized in terror that the animal in question was a black leopard, instantly identifying him as the divine beast himself. All the nobles and knights bowed down in a sign of deep respect to the empire's protector. Walking with pure grandeur through the venue, Ammon approached Blondina and offered himself as the prey hunted by her. To the general shock of the nobles, the black leopard publicly confirmed that he had belonged to the princess from the very beginning. Blondina, taken aback, questioned his presence at the event. Ammon brought up an old conversation where Bridie had felt undervalued for never receiving hunting offerings, revealing that he had dreamed of the day he would offer himself as her prize to honor her. In light of the unprecedented act, the official announcement confirmed Blondina's victory in the tournament. The emperor proudly introduced his eldest daughter as the grand champion, amidst the applause and cheers of the audience. Blondina could hardly believe she had emerged victorious from the competition, looking affectionately at the huge feline and recognizing that she owed that memorable achievement to her loyal companion. The emperor boasted about his daughter's triumph before his counselors. In contrast, Marquis Rodson stewed in his frustration in silence, outraged at having been outdone by an animal. Noticing the Marquis's discontent, Princess Adele approached him and mocked his attempt to offer his catch to Blondina, shifting to praise the noble's charm and aristocratic poise. Adele seduced Marquis Rodson with promises of power and status should he ally himself with her, emphasizing the massive advantage of marrying the true pureblood princess instead of her half-breed sister, leaving the noble deep in thought regarding the proposal. This is not good at all. Blondina questioned whether Ammon wouldn't face trouble with the elders for visiting the palace so often. The feline proudly countered that, as the great leader of the divine beasts, he owed no explanation to anyone about whom he chose to spend time with. Ammon assured her that he would visit the princess's quarters freely at night, without needing to hide. Blondina naively accepted the news, while the leader playfully teased her over her complete lack of malice regarding his true intentions. Lack of malice, him. Amidst exchanges of banter and affection, Blondina accused Ammon of lying about not devouring humans, to which he humorously admitted that he changed his mind quite frequently. The young woman smiled, recognizing that the feline's presence made her world so much brighter. Lart observed from afar the close bond and moments of affection between Blondina and Ammon. Conversing with Lucy, the prince deduced that the two were involved in a romance, silently pondering that having the favor of the divine beast could benefit his future ambitions for the throne. In her quarters, Adele fueled her resentment against Blondina, reaffirming to herself that she would never accept a half-breed of humble origins as her older sister. Adele celebrated her alliance with Marquis Rodson, confident that uniting with a traditional family would significantly strengthen the faction opposed to the divine beasts and accelerate her claims to become empress. Blondina lamented the obligation to travel with the royal family to the ice festival on the Zervan Peninsula, anticipating unpleasant moments. Magetto enthusiastically begged to accompany her on the trip, promising to stay quiet along the way. Missing Ammon, Blondina learned from Magetto that the feline had headed to the springs. The princess decided to go find him, well aware of the forest's dangers, but driven by how much she missed him. Blondina recalled the magical ring given to her by Ammon to protect her against creatures, as well as the moment he had rubbed his own, sent onto her clothes to ward off any threats. As she approached the springs, the young woman was confronted by Shanti, a divine beast who recognized the princess from the rite of passage and knew she was the human the leader cherished so deeply. Shanti questioned why Ammon had not yet marked Blondina with the imprint, asking if she was merely prey to him. She then warned the princess that looking for Ammon at that precise moment was extremely dangerous, as the leader was currently completely out of control. Shanti sneered at the danger posed by Ammon and began circling Blondina, praising the young woman's appetizing scent. Frightened, as she recalled the predatory nature of the divine beasts, the princess heard from the creature that it was all just a joke to avoid angering the leader. Blondina asked Shanti to take her to Ammon. Even while warning about the leader's strange behavior after visiting the springs, the creature offered her back and dashed off, carrying the young woman along. During the rapid ride, Shanti commented on how small humans were and asked when Blondina had met Ammon, discovering that their friendship dated back to childhood. Shanti asked if Ammon hadn't placed his imprint, yet because Blondina was so small, surprised to notice that the young woman was entirely unfamiliar with the concept. Jostled by the rough gallop, Blondina compared the ride to her smooth journeys on Ammon, recognizing the feline's gentle care. Upon arriving at their destination, Shanti asked for the young woman's name once more. The princess introduced herself as Blondina, but mentioned that Ammon usually called her affectionately by Britty. Ammon appeared furious and attacked Shanti by surprise. The leader of the divine beasts pinned the creature down and angrily ordered her never to use the princess's affectionate nickname, demanding that she address her strictly as Blondina. Subdued by the leader's power, Shanti agreed to honor the demand. Slinking away and grumbling, the creature remarked on Ammon's terribly possessive nature. Seeing Ammon's silence, Blondina asked if she had done wrong by coming there. The feline approached with glowing eyes and warned that her presence was dangerous, as he himself posed a threat to the young woman at that moment. Ammon admitted that he couldn't control his impulses and asked her never to approach carrying another beast's scent again. The feline explained that the aroma made it difficult to restrain himself and wait for the right time. Ammon declared that he was waiting for the opportunity to leave his imprint on Blondina's body, asking if the princess was finally ready to accept him. Surrendering to his feelings and the desire to mark the princess, Ammon drew close to Blondina and sealed the affectionate, steamy moment with a passionate kiss. The two lay down together on the ground, in an atmosphere of pure intimacy and affection. Surrendering to the moment, Blondina silently wondered if it was all just a dream too good to be true, while Ammon continued to kiss her tenderly. Ammon confessed that he had been on the verge of losing control, but promised to go slow so as not to hurt her, since she was human. He wrapped his arms around Blondina with care, praising the warmth and softness of her skin. Back in her quarters the following day, Blondina covered her blushing face, unable to believe what had transpired the night before. Blondina reflected on Ammon's sudden actions, wondering how all of it had happened if she had thought he liked Lucy. However, recalling the feline's warm gaze, the young woman was certain his feelings were real. "Oh boy, Britty, he kissed you and you still have doubts." The princess relived in her memory the touch of his lips and Ammon's genuine embrace, growing confused over what he truly felt and questioning whether beasts express their emotions differently from humans. Deep within the forest, a mysterious presence approached a giant feline with pitch-black fur. Believing it to be a leopard affected by local magic, the figure treated the beast with condescension. With a magical gesture, the figure granted speech to the feline. Irritated by the provocation, the leopard growled, demanding to know its identity, whereupon the entity declared itself to be the light of those lands and the true protector of the forest. Lucy found Blondina looking pale in the palace and asked if she was all right. The princess played it off in embarrassment, saying she had only had a dream about Ammon, but the maid instantly realized something significant had happened between them. As Lucy subtly tried to encourage her mistress to open up about what happened, Lart interrupted their conversation, bringing up another topic. Lart began gesturing animatedly about his horse, Blackwind, explaining that spring and early summer marked the ideal mating season for animals. Blondina interrupted her brother in surprise and pressed him to know if the mating season rule applied to all animals. Hearing his confirmation, the princess blushed deeply as she reached the shocked conclusion that Ammon's kiss might have just been a seasonal impulse. "She's getting it all wrong again. In reality, he was holding himself back. That's why it wasn't safe for you, Britty, since Ammon promised to go slow. Otherwise, he would end up, well, you guys know." Convinced that Ammon's behavior had been driven by mating season instincts, Blondina resolved to confront him to explain that humans viewed love differently. Determined to make him take responsibility for the kiss, the princess even considered giving up royal life to live in the divine beast's forest if necessary. Observing Ammon's behavior in the palace, Blondina pondered the feline's actions, attributing his unstable mood to heightened sensitivity and instincts during that time of year. Admiring the beauty and majesty of her companion, Blondina brought up the topic, asking if it truly was the leopard's mating season. Ammon reacted with surprise to the question and proudly pointed out that his nature was superior to that of a mere animal. Blondina explained that humans did not engage in relationships purely by instinct and warned that, since he could transform into a human, he would be seen as a scoundrel if he acted like a beast. With sharp insight, Ammon amusedly concluded that, to avoid being labeled a scoundrel, he should engage exclusively with her. Teased by the feline's conclusion, the young woman tried to hide her embarrassment while Ammon approached playfully in his cat form. Blondina scolded the giant feline's antics for trying to pass himself off as a harmless kitten. Ammon leaned his weight on the princess in his leopard form. He teased her, saying it would be even more embarrassing in his human form, stating he was simply giving her time to get used to it so he wouldn't do something he might regret. Recalling how Blondina had been applauded when welcomed by Ammon, Adele was consumed with jealousy. Determined to subjugate the divine beasts to secure her ascension to the throne, she received Marquis Philip Rodson. The noble informed her that the translation of the ancient documents was progressing successfully and that the location of the sacred temple was about to be uncovered. Philip questioned how they would identify the true descendant of Barahan. The princess explained that according to imperial legends, the sacred spear and the golden key would grant access to the temple, and the sacred harp would resonate the moment the true heir stepped inside. Adele revealed she had already captured several blonde, golden-eyed candidates for the test. Questioned by Philip regarding the fate of those who failed, the princess cold-bloodedly declared that she would execute all false heirs without hesitation. Ammon questioned Magetto about how human marriages worked, commenting that they usually only spent the night together after a formal union. The sparrow was startled by the unusual question, and the feline, irritated by the lack of useful answers, dismissed the little bird. When Magetto considered going to Blondina to find out more about the matter, Ammon threatened to devour him and destroy his nest should he dare reveal the question to the princess. Terrified by the leopard's fury, the bird fled in outrage. Thoughtful, Ammon concluded that he would need to find someone else to clear up his doubt. Later, while Shanti and his beloved were sharing an intimate moment, Ammon suddenly and impatiently called for Shanti, ordering him to step outside for a private chat. Getting straight to the point, Ammon asked Shanti how a wedding was done. Finding the sudden question strange, Shanti was asked by Ammon how he had managed to initiate his relationship with Hala. Shanti began to recount his courtship steps, from the confession to gifting Hala's mother raspberries. However, Ammon dashed off in the middle of the explanation, leaving Shanti indignant at having been left talking to himself. Back at the palace, Ammon assumed his human form and approached a worker, asking for the emperor's whereabouts. With respect and hesitation before the divine beast, the maid informed him that the emperor was in the blue building reserved for foreign delegations. Expressing his thanks for the guidance, Ammon headed toward the indicated location. As he walked through the estate in his leopard form, Ammon drew the admired gazes and whispers of those who witnessed the creature's impressive presence. After transforming into a human, Ammon reflected that the bipedal form was more practical for long distances. Mistaken for a lost foreign delegate by an official, he was guided to the emperor's waiting room. Led to the reception, Ammon found the bureaucracy of having to wait for his name to be called alongside diplomats strange, briefly considering that barging into the place by force might not be a bad idea after all. While waiting in the room, Ammon was approached by Maharin of Tarkan, who introduced himself and asked about his origin. With composure, the divine beast revealed his true identity as Ammon Akin, coming straight from the forest. Upon hearing Ammon mention he was from the forest, Maharin mistakenly assumed it was the eastern lands recently conquered by the empire. Attempting to display superiority, the diplomat greeted the young man with a firm handshake to assert dominance. Confused by the painful handshake, Ammon matched the pressure with his overwhelming strength, making the man scream in desperate agony. While the diplomat groaned in pain, Ammon pondered in amusement over the strange, noisy customs humans used to greet one another. The emperor and Prince Lart spoke exhaustedly about their obligations to diplomats from over 40 nations. Lart thought about his resolve to become a strong ruler to protect Lucy. Shouts in the hall interrupted the royal meeting. Checking on the commotion, Lart was surprised to discover that Ammon had already defeated and broken the wrists of 6 consecutive representatives in alleged tests of strength. Ammon continued accepting challenges from the diplomats, while the emperor and Lart watched in shock. The sovereign approached the scene, and the guards demanded everyone bow to the emperor. Upon the emperor's arrival, to the general surprise of the foreigners, the sovereign himself and his subjects bowed down in respect before Ammon, publicly recognizing him as the great leader of the divine beasts and protector of the empire. Bored with the formalities and reverences of the nobles, Ammon was promptly escorted by the emperor himself to a private audience in the royal quarters. In the waiting room, the diplomats who suffered broken bones proudly celebrated the fact that they were the first to shake hands and feel the legendary divine beast's power. Left alone with the creature, the emperor cautiously wondered about the purpose of the leader's visit. To his surprise, Ammon directly asked what he liked and what he could gift him to make him satisfied. Ammon recalled Shanti's advice about pleasing one's in-laws to win permission for courtship. The emperor reflected on the threats and replied that all he desired from the divine beast was peace and stability for the empire. Ammon was left confused about how to gift the ruler something as abstract as peace. Realizing the impasse between the two, Lart respectfully stepped in, requesting permission to present a practical solution to the request. Ammon silently lamented the conversation's philosophical detour, reaffirming that he only wished to please the emperor in order to obtain Blondina's hand in marriage. Rather than imposing his will through force, the feline made it clear that he desired for the union to be blessed by everyone so as not to cause the princess any worry. Faced with doubts over how to guarantee peace, Lart stepped into the audience, pointing out that imperial history itself contained precedents of alliances sealed through matrimony. Lart illustrated how the marriages of previous emperors served to end wars and stabilize the empire. The prince pondered, however, that the divine beasts had historically despised humanity, questioning whether they would accept such a union. Ammon stunned the emperor by openly declaring that he would agree to marry Blondina if it brought stability to the realm, leaving the leaders caught off guard by the confirmation of his feelings. Ammon firmly emphasized that the union would only happen if it was Blondina's wish, strictly forbidding any form of political coercion against the young woman. The emperor reflected on the divine beast's surprisingly honorable stance regarding the arrangement. The emperor agreed to Ammon's conditions, while far away, Blondina felt her ears itch, suspecting that someone was talking about her. The eve of the new leader's coronation set both the palace and the city in motion with celebrations and preparations for the grand official announcement. Conversing in her quarters, Blondina tried to get Ammon excited about the formal recognition of his leadership. The feline countered that human acclaim mattered nothing to him, but revealed mysteriously that other reasons made him genuinely happy. Drawing close with tenderness, Ammon sealed the moment with a passionate kiss, explaining that his joy stemmed from the opportunities and power the position of leader would grant him to protect her. Ammon asked the princess to wait just a little longer for his plans. Even without fully understanding the riddle behind the feline's words, Blondina rejoiced upon seeing her companion's happiness. In her secret quarters, Adele received reports from Marquis Philip regarding the search for the sacred temple. The noble revealed that, according to prisoners, the temple was located in a white structure in the forest west of the palace. Adele and Philip recognized that the proximity to the divine beast's territory would complicate searches in the western region. The princess grew thrilled at the imminent discovery that would allow her to control the beasts, but the Marquis warned her of the risk that Barahan's descendant might rebel using their divine powers. Agreeing with the threat raised by Philip, Adele sought a way to safeguard herself against potential betrayals by the heir, at which point the noble suggested using magic stones to restrain and dominate the divine beasts. The population gathered enthusiastically on the balconies to watch the coronation of the new leader of the divine beasts. Citizens commented apprehensively about rumors regarding the black leopard's impressive size and terrifying presence. The imposing march of guests and knights began with firm steps to the sound of the imperial hall doors opening. Coming along with them was the emperor. Amidst cheers and acclamations, the crowd celebrated the emperor's presence and the officialization of the empire's protector, while Blondina smiled proudly as she witnessed Ammon's achievement. The emperor organized his troops and ordered them to bow. Before the attentive crowd, several leopards emerged, observing the commotion. With his majestic bearing, he let out an imposing roar as he took center stage at the ceremony's altar. The guards and the public raised their salutes as they recalled the ancient peace pact between humans and the divine beasts, in which the realm's security had been placed into the hands of the sacred protectors. Ammon then snapped the sword in half as a sign of the alliance's completion and the beginning of a grand era of peace. The emperor promised fidelity to the master of the sacred forest. In silence, Ammon celebrated the realization of his dreams since the day he met Blondina, now waiting only for the fulfillment of his most precious wish. The emperor formally declared the appointment of Ammon akin to everyone's applause. Amidst the celebrations, Blondina cheerfully approached to congratulate her companion, giving him a big surprise hug. Ammon thanked Blondina for her affection, while Magetto flew around them, celebrating and asking the new leader for protection. Observing the scene from afar, the nobles commented in shock over the unbelievable closeness between the princess and the divine beast. The guests talked about Ammon's recent visit to the emperor's quarters, divided between fascination with the creatures and fear of getting close to the massive feline. Adele watched with deep fury and indignation as the royal family bowed down before the leopard, accusing the animal of having bewitched everyone and swearing to find a way to overturn the situation and destroy him. Well, we've reached the end of the chapters. For now. And there, do you want the continuation? So leave a like and a comment with a cookie. Until next time, my dears.